Veterans Day is just around the corner, and our first story is about a deceased Tennessee veteran who left behind a fascinating diary. A diary that revealed glimpses of his life as a prisoner of war. Now, this book was lost for many years, but finally found its way to the soldier's relatives, all thanks to the work of Tennessee State archivists. This is the story of a typical boy from Nashville who grew up to be anything but ordinary. A story of war and perseverance, of memories and mystery, and of love and family. Like millions of other young men in the 1940s, Hardy Missioner's life was interrupted by a world at war. Leaving his home and family, he took to the skies over Germany as part of the 8th Air Force's mission to cripple Hitler's war machine. Odds were stacked against the American bomber crews during the daring daylight raids. And 1 week before D-Day, a burst of cannon fire from an enemy fighter ended Lieutenant Missioner's days above the clouds. Exchanging the danger of combat for the frustration and hardship of imprisonment, Hardy would spend the next 11 months as a POW in Stalag Luft III, the camp made famous earlier that year by the great escape of 76 Allied prisoners. Aged by his experience, but lucky to be alive, he returned home after being liberated by General George Patton in the spring of '45. Sadly, 12 years later, cancer proved deadlier than German gunfire, as Hardy passed away in 1957. That would have been the end of Hardy Missioner's story had it not been for a diary.
My mother and grandmother talked about the diary a lot.
Skip Sawyer is Hardy's nephew.
We had heard about this journal all of our lives.
Jerry Worley is Hardy's niece.
The diary right away caught our attention because we thought it was so interesting and it was such a special item.
Archivist Gwen Thayer is not related to Hardy, but nevertheless played an important role in his story.
And when he died, then the diary disappeared. His wife left, and the diary went with her. So I never saw it until my sister called me.
And for some unknown reason, I was doing some stuff at my computer at home, and I just Googled Hardy A. Michener, and it came up.
What came up was an old, tattered, priceless link to the past.
It was a very important, sentimental, emotional kind of discovery. And
oh my gosh, they have this journal, so I called.
She called me and sent me and told me she'd found it online and sent me some emails about it. And so that's when I thought, well, maybe I can get a copy of this.
These things come up often, actually, around here. We find things here that you would never expect.
Gwen is referring to the Tennessee State Library and Archives, which received the diary after the Tennessee Historical Society purchased it at an auction in New York.
We got this diary digitized, we put it on the internet, and the family found it, and they contacted us. And
put a little note in there that this was my uncle, and as far as I know, my sister and I are only 2 living relatives, and I didn't know if I'd ever hear from them or not. And then Gwen responded.
And of course we responded with great excitement and said, yes, we want to work with you.
A week or 2 later, here we are.
It's very fragile, but of course you are welcome to handle it. You always think about those archival moments, and that was one of them that makes your job all worth it. So
and that's him, right?
Yeah, this is a depiction of the crash. Here you have fire coming out where the plane crashes, and then he's coming down in his parachute.
Through the newly discovered diary, Hardy's niece and nephew were reunited with an uncle they barely remembered. What they found was a brilliant, fun-loving airman whose warmth and talent touched not only the lives of his family, but his fellow prisoners as well. Hardy's pilot, Crawford Hicks, recounted how Mitch not only boosted morale, he also made the most of their meager rations.
He said, I'll do this. I'll be there, the cook, and I'll take care of all these things. But all of the food that comes into this room belongs to me. If you get something at home, package from home, I get it. He took that food and made repast out of it. He made good eating food. We had the best meals of anybody in the whole building.
Once we interviewed the pilot of the plane, that Michener was on, the person who knew him best, we found that the kinds of things he wrote in the diary were very different from the way he kind of presented himself publicly. He helped all of the men with cooking and really kind of maintaining their spirit and their morale. But in the diary, I feel like you get a slightly different perspective on his loneliness and his desire for freedom, his desire for home. And that's what I find so interesting, is that it doesn't necessarily reflect the way everybody else perceived him. It's his own personal, private story. And that's what I like about it.
The personal story of an American hero that would have been lost if not for the efforts of Gwen and friends.
There is no doubt in my mind that the Tennessee State Library and Archives is really the best spot for you to do your genealogical research in the state of Tennessee. You can do it either online or come here in person. We have many, many letters, photographs, diaries, journals, you name it, from private family collections. And that, to me, is what makes our collections special. And not every state archive will have that kind of thing.
They have more information about my uncle than I had. I couldn't believe how much stuff she found. It feels good for people to be so excited about somebody in your family.
It's just so exciting, and my children are so excited, and I just think it's going to be great that he lives on. I'm very proud too, and this will live on forever.